Hi guys, welcome back to Binge Watch Britney. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Jersey Shore, so let's go ahead and get into it. Alrighty, so I'm very excited to be doing this episode because season 7 has just kind of concluded. I know that they're doing the reunions, but I haven't actually watched them. But what I do want to say, kind of like as an intro to this episode, is that I'm really excited that my sister watched maybe the last 4 or 5 episodes with me. She is not someone who has been actively watching Jersey Shore, but she knows all of like the big moments, either from seeing it online and all of that stuff and me talking about it. So she's aware of the big moments, but she hasn't been keeping up season to season like I have. And I'm really glad that she was able to join in and watch with me because I was watching it. And obviously, I turned the volume up really loud when I'm watching. So basically, everyone can overhear what I'm watching. So she was able to hear what was going on. And then eventually, she sat down. And normally, when I'm watching something that she's not interested in, she'll just put her headphones in or she'll just watch something else so she's not actually paying attention to what's on the screen, but she can still hear it. And so anyway, she eventually somehow kind of like got into it and was paying attention to what was going on. And I was really excited about that because I do enjoy it when we watch the same shows and when she's interested in the shows that I like to watch. As far as getting me into her shows, that's a little bit of a different story, but yeah, I'm so glad that she was willing to watch it with me. And so one thing I want to highlight is that she really got invested in the Angelina and Vinny 2.0 drama, which we'll get into later. But with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. Alrighty, so now let's go ahead and transition to our top 5 moments. So for moment 1 was them going back to Seaside. I think they have gone back to Seaside in the past. I'm not 100% sure. It might have been like maybe in the first season or something like that. But this was a bigger moment because they were getting their own Jersey Shore Day in Jersey. And so that was a big deal. And there was a whole thing where they thought it was like a national or a federal holiday, but it's not. It's just something local to Jersey Shore, and it really makes a lot of sense. Oh, actually, it might have been Atlantic City, actually, I'm not sure, one of the two. But it was a huge moment because obviously Jersey Shore took place in Jersey, and there was a whole thing about them filming there back in the day. Like, nobody wanted them to film there, and they got a lot of negative press, and then obviously they became pop culture icons, and so everybody who even watched MTV at one point, they know who the cast of Jersey Shore is. And it's really crazy when you go back and you watch the old episodes because you can see how they had like a crowd of people following them once they really blew up, and they don't have that big of a crowd now when they're filming. But anybody who cared about this group of people at one point in time, they know like the impact that they have had on pop culture. So I'm really happy that they're still filming. So anyway, the Jersey Shore Day kind of turned into an issue because we know that Angelina and Sammy have been butting heads, and so there was a moment where they all decided to go back to the shore house and they had to drive there. The girls and the guys separated, and the guys went first, and I think Paulie D had to go back to do his DJ gig, whatever, and the girls were gonna leave a little bit later, but then they were stuck waiting for Angelina, and I have no idea how long they waited. They may have waited up to like 2 hours or something like that, and I guess she's always taking a long time to get ready, and she's just really not aware of like how much time she's taking and how much they are waiting on her. And it's very interesting because obviously if they watch the seasons back, they can see kind of like how it looks on camera and what everyone else is seeing. So maybe that's something that she could work on. I know a lot of people do not like Angelina. I have no issues with her. Obviously, she has her moments where she does crazy stuff, but I'm very surprised that if she watches the seasons back, that she hadn't picked up on that and tried to make an effort to change that so that the rest of the group is not waiting on her as much as they have been. So anyway, the girls finally make it to the shore house, and it's actually really cool because Danny is still running the t-shirt store, and then obviously the house is his. And so because people still care about Jersey Shore, he's able to do tours to where fans can come through. And so while they're there, he's actually doing a tour, and I think there's food there for the fans and the visitors or whatever, and they think it's for them, so they're eating it. And then the fans and Danny come in, and then it's just really, a really cool moment for those fans to be able to interact with the Jersey Shore cast while they're there, and then also while they're filming. So I think that's probably any fan's dream come true to be able to interact with the cast spontaneously like that, because it's different if you know that they're going to be there and then obviously you go there so that you can meet them, but when you're really not expecting it, I think it makes a huge difference. So one of the things I was very surprised by is how they talk about like how dirty the house was. Not necessarily the house, but like the beds, the sheets, and all of that stuff. And obviously that's probably not a good thing to hear, especially for Danny. I don't know if he rents that house out, but obviously he does tours of the house so people can walk through. And one interesting thing to point out is because I didn't know this when the OG show was filming. I didn't know that the house basically connected to the tea shop, um to connect it to the t-shirt shop, because they would always show them walking the long way to get to the t-shirt shop when all they had to do was like go out the backyard basically and into the back of the t-shirt shop and then to the front of it where the boardwalk was. So they always show them coming in from the boardwalk side, and so I thought that that was just fascinating because obviously they should have never been late. They should have never been late to work because literally they were right next to the place that they were working. So just an interesting fact. And so going back to them talking about how the shore house, the beds and the sheets and all that stuff was gross and disgusting, the girls did end up leaving to go to Nicole's shore house so that they could get some better sleep and all that stuff. And they left Mike in the house. And one thing I want to talk about while we're talking about the being at Jersey Shore, like the actual location, we know that Sammy has a store. We know that Nicole has a store, and she spent this season talking about how she wanted to open up a new location. And so we see the gang going to Nashville and she's scouting location. And then we see a connection to Kristen Cavalieri from Laguna Beach in the Hills, which is very interesting. Obviously, with them both being on MTV, you'd expect that they would kind of like cross paths or they would know of each other and have those connections, because we do see that a lot with the Bravo community, or the Bravo universe, where all of the different housewives from the different cities, they know of each other, they have relationships and all of that. So I don't know why it surprised me, but you kind of think that they wouldn't interact or wouldn't know of each other, but obviously they do. And so they go to her store, they look around and all of that stuff. And I know that as of the season concluding, that Snooki was able to find a location and she did open up another shop in Nashville. Going into top moment number two, are you friends with her? So obviously this is a throwback to the OG show where basically Ronnie and Sammy were in a fight, and I think it was over Ronnie cheating or something like that. And obviously, him and Jenny were very close. And I know that in the original show, they think people, the fans, think that Sammy and they think that Jenny and Ronnie have hooked up, and maybe they were a thing kind of briefly at the beginning of the season, because I know that. Obviously, when they were pitching the show and they knew who was going to be on it, they wanted JWoww and Pauly D to be a couple, so they were pushing that, but that's not what happened. And then obviously the big romance became Ronnie and Sammy. And so Sammy, did not like the relationship that Ronnie had with Sammy. They were fighting about something, and then he was talking to Jenny. She got upset, and then she's on the balcony, I think, yelling at him, and she's like, "Are you friends with her?" or something like that. And then she actually comes down, and she at some point punches him. And so obviously everyone talks about the toxicity of their relationship, the domestic violence, and all of that stuff, with him destroying her stuff in their shared bedroom, and then just the way he talked to her and treated on the way he talked to her and cheated on her and treated her and all of that stuff. And so one of the moments that people bring up is when she punched him on the show. And so anyway, what this relates to as far as the new season is that we know that Angelina and Sammy are butting heads. In earlier in season 7, I believe Angelina basically pitched it as she was the one responsible for getting Sammy back, and nobody else could get Sammy to come back to the show, and it was her reaching out to make it happen. And so obviously that's a huge moment, even if it's not true. Her having a role and being involved in Sammy coming back in whatever capacity it is huge, because when they announced the show, Sammy flat out refused to come back. She didn't want to talk to the cast. She was not interested. And so there was this clear divide between Sammy and the rest of the group. So the fact that they were able to break that wall and bring her in, regardless of who it was, and obviously that person should get some credit just being attached to that storyline. So I can understand why Angelina wants that credit, especially for something as historic in the MTV world and the Jersey Shore world, as far as Sammy coming back. So anyway, this caused a bunch of trouble because Angelina really wanted that credit from Sammy of acknowledging that she is the reason that she came back. And then also Angelina was under the impression that Sammy was going to take her side. But Sammy came back and made peace with everyone else right away. So that just left Angelina on the outs with the girls because Sammy didn't want to jump in and have her back against the rest of the house. And so obviously, Angelina wasn't happy about that, and so we see this moment where they are at a bar somewhere in Seaside, one of the bars that they used to go to, one of the restaurants that they used to go to, and she is really drunk or whatever, and they're in the bathroom. She's just going crazy, and she's breaking the fourth wall, and she's interacting with the camera, and she's basically just telling Sammy off and making comments about her, and then there's the whole thing with being called a toddler and all of that. But anyway, so the gang ends up going to a Jets game, and before the game, I think Angelina DM'd a football player, and we saw her do this with the situations. What was it? The thing where you with cornhole. He had a cornhole tournament, and you saw her basically DM everybody, and she was like, I'm trying to get in their heads, but also she's flirting. The guys are gonna flirt back, whatever. And so we saw a moment where Jay Cutler was at the cornhole tournament, and so that's obviously another crossover because he is Kristen Cavalier's ex-husband. Whatever, not related to my point, but anyway. So Angelina basically does the same thing, and she DMs the football player. He's married. His wife knows about it, and so she makes a video. It goes viral, and so obviously the group is talking about Angelina being messy and doing this, and then Angelina's kind of like annoyed that the girl is like making this video and kind of like trying to get attention and all of that stuff. And so I don't know how it happened, but I think Sammy is a Jets fan, and somehow she runs into this girl again or whatever, and they basically do a TikTok video, I think, and it's to the voice of her saying, "Are you friends with her?" And so obviously the message that the video sends is that Sammy is kind of siding with the girl against Angelina and the whole she DM'd my husband beef. And so obviously Angelina doesn't like that. And we know that if somebody else had done that, or if Angelina had done that, the other girls would have been mad. Obviously, she should have been aware of what message I was sending in making that video with her arch nemesis. And so obviously Sammy thought it was innocent, but everyone knows like this is shots fired. You're just making it the situation worse. And so obviously that happened, and they were still butting heads and really trying to figure out how to move forward. Alrighty, so going into my third point, at some point in the season we have Pauly D renting a house and inviting the gang over, and then we also have the gang, I think, staying at some sort of bunker. I'm not sure which happened first, I cannot recall, but I will just talk about the bunker. So they wanted to go to a bunker, and basically they ended up like renting out this underground bunker that was basically interior in the interior. It was designed to be in the 1970s, 80s vibe. So everything was really old school, but it was like a huge property or whatever underground. And they just wanted to see basically what it was like being able to survive if there was an apocalypse and they had to go underground. And normally they do have like those types of bunkers where basically you can store food, canned food, that type of stuff, to where you can survive if you're not able to survive at the ground level because of whatever is going on. So that was an interesting thing to do. That's one thing I like about Jersey Shore, is they're always willing to try different things and kind of see how it turns out. Obviously, it would have been more fun if it was like a challenge type of situation, like, hey, stay here for 3 days and figure it out, and that type of challenge situation, instead of just staying there for a few hours and kind of testing it out. But I do really appreciate that they are willing to try different things, because one of the complaints about the family vacation is that compared to the OG show where they're partying all the time, they don't really do that as much. Yes, they go out to the nightclub, but they don't do anything crazy like what they were doing back in the day, because one, they have children, they have families, and all of that stuff, and they're obviously older, so they're not going to party that same way. And so, obviously, with this show coming back, they really have to find their thing that is consistent in order to kind of have that continuity throughout the season and all of that stuff. And so, I'm really glad that they're able to like try different things and they want to try different things while going on these different vacations that you really unite them together, because I think one of the things they do a good job of in Family Vacation is they really make an effort to show how close the gang is. And I don't know how close they were in between filming, but I'm really glad that they do have this opportunity and they can kind of rekindle those relationships if there ever was any separation or fall off in maintaining those relationships. Okay, anyway, so going back to Pauly D, so he rented a house. He didn't want the gang at his actual house, and Pauly D has a mansion. He's the richest of the Jersey Shore cast. He lives in Nevada, I think, and he has this huge property. He has a lot of cars, and so if you are on Instagram and you see his Instagram, you see that he is really kind of living that Jersey Shore life, but at a much higher celebrity status. Like, he has all the money in the world now that he could possibly ever need. And then compared to Jersey Shore, he was kind of doing more local gigs, but now he's like traveling everywhere and going everywhere and really playing and DJing to these huge crowds. So he is really living that kind of like MTV lifestyle. It sounds really weird to say, but like, I'm not surprised that he is a DJ and that he's successful the way he is from someone who was on MTV, which is all about music and how the artists live and kind of like promoting, especially because they were doing those documentary type of TV shows. And then that was really one of the first networks where I saw people getting kind of like their own show and showing what everything was like behind the cameras, or when they're not on stage, when they're not in the recording studio and all of that. So you're just really getting that behind the scenes look of what it's like to be a musical artist. And I really feel like Pauly D has really tapped into that, and he's living such a great lifestyle. So I think for whatever reason, the gang has not been to his house before, and so he didn't want to have them there because he didn't want them to mess up stuff, and so he rented a house. They were like, hey, did he move? And they're like, oh, his place is weird. He doesn't know where anything is. And then at some point, they do find photos of the people who actually own the house in some of the drawers. But prior to that, they were really suspicious, and he was leaving basically late at night in the middle of the night to go back to his real house and where Nikki was. And then also, he had his real neighbor come over so that he could keep up the act of pretending like it was his house. And so it was just good to see the gang together doing whatever and kind of having fun. That's one thing I really like about Jersey Shore, is that they always seem to have fun no matter what they're doing. And if you don't take it too seriously, and if you're not expecting some deep or elaborate storyline, you're not going to be happy with the show. But if you just accept it for what it is, which is a group of friends hanging out and just making good moments, making the best of the situation. Not that anything is wrong with the situation, but they are aware of what they're putting out there because they are recording a TV show. So, since we're talking about Pauly D, one thing I want to highlight is the whole situation with Pauly D and Nikki talking about how pasta tastes different. And I actually want to back up Pauly D on that, because yes, all of the noodles are made with the same ingredient, but because of the shape, and I actually googled that, because of the shape of the different noodles, they hold or they absorb the sauce differently, and so that's why it tastes different. So if you like, for example, I like spaghetti and meat sauce, right? And so when I have it like that, it tastes one way. But then when I use that same kind of like meat sauce with like penne noodles, it doesn't taste the same, and it's because the noodles are one different and they are holding the sauce differently. And it's just really weird to explain, but if you are someone who cares about what type of noodles you have in your pasta dish, you're going to be able to relate to what Pauly D is saying, because one, it depends on the sauce you're using, and then it also depends on the noodles, and it just flavors the dish in a different way depending on the shape of your noodles. So I really want to call out that that is a thing, and I totally agree with Holly D on that. Alrighty, so going into my fourth top moment. So we know that Sammy is doing IBS. We know that Sammy is doing IVF and she's also engaged to Justin. So I was really glad to see this storyline because we did have Angelina show kind of her journey to finding her father and kind of showing something that was really serious going on in her life. So I like that we have that, and then we also have Snooki looking for her biological family. So I really like that they are now showing Sammy going through IVF, and I think that this is such a sensitive topic because one, we're dealing with real people and all of that, but in terms of Sammy and Ronnie, obviously we know that Ronnie kind of like moved on and had a kid, and so I always wondered how Sammy felt about that because this was a relationship that she was really invested in, and I'm sure she had a lot of trauma over it, especially given what happened between the two of them and the way that everything was so public. And so, with her being a woman and her being older, and obviously when you're older, you have to think about having children a little bit differently than men because of your biological clock. And so, one thing that came up when they were showing the storyline was I always wondered how she felt about Ronnie having kids because obviously if they ever were to get back together in their new relationship, and I did want them to get to I did want them to get back together as long as they both have changed in terms of how they treat each other, regardless of what happened in their relationship outside of each other. If they were to come together and be different people than what we saw in the OG show, I think that that would be completely different. And so, anyway, I wonder if it's weird for her if they are going to be around each other more, how she's going to take hearing that he has a kid and that he's moved on when this is something that she's struggling with, and she did waste a lot of time on him, and that is time that she lost to have a baby as well, if that makes sense. And so anyway, going back to Sammy's IVF journey, so we do see her, injecting herself with hormones. We see her going to the doctor. We see her getting implanted. And then we also learn, I don't know how much time had passed, but she got implanted with the embryo. And then I think it didn't take or it wasn't successful. And so she was not pregnant. And so obviously that's probably a huge sense of loss because she's spending a lot of money to make this happen. She is older. And then I don't know if she froze her eggs or anything like that, but that is such a difficult conversation because as an older woman myself, not that I'm super old or anything like that, but obviously I have never considered freezing my eggs and I don't know if I would, but I know that if I do want to have children, I have to move quickly just because of everything being more complicated now due to my age. And so I was really glad that they showed that storyline because that's not really something that they would talk about on the OG show. Obviously, we know that Snooki, I think, got pregnant on the OG show, but I think what Sammy is dealing with would never really talk about that on the OG show just because it wouldn't have been relevant to her age, if that made sense. And so I am glad that they're kind of opening up and showing a little bit more to them beyond the party lifestyle that they are known for. And I really do appreciate when they attempt to have these serious discussions. Okay, so moving on to the other big moment. Okay, so moving on to the other big moment related to Sammy, we have her and Justin getting engaged. So if you're not familiar, Justin was actually a bouncer at Karma in the OG show. So I don't know how often I don't know how often they interacted, but he had to have been very aware of the drama between Sammy and Ronnie. Even if he didn't watch the show, he would have seen them and their interactions at the club, whatever. And so that is kind of a unique thing that's happening here, because I don't think anyone else on the show has hooked up with someone who was either um around them when they were filming the OG show, or someone from production. I know that Jenny obviously was married to, and she is now divorced from Roger. And then obviously Snooki met Johnny while she was filming the show, and the same thing for Dina. But as far as people who we basically didn't expect them to end up with, this is one situation, because I never even noticed Justin from the old TV show until they pointed it out when she started dating him or whatever. And obviously they talk about how he looks like Ronnie. But if you have a type, obviously you're gonna go for that type. And it's not even necessarily that her type is Ronnie. Ronnie fits her type. So of course any guy that she dates is gonna look like that. And because Ronnie's the first guy that we've seen her with who matches her type, we're gonna think that her type is Ronnie, and any guy that she dates after him is just her trying to replace Johnny, or her trying to replace Ronnie, when it's really that Ronnie just fits her type. It's a really weird thing to explain, but there is a difference between her pursuing guys that look like Ronnie and Ronnie just fitting her type because that's what she likes. So anyway, we had the two of them getting engaged, and so it's her birthday, and he proposes on her birthday. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I feel like your birthday is something personal for you and your family. Obviously your husband's going to be part of your family, but to one, not know how a relationship is going to turn out, and then have your birthday be the same day that a guy proposed to you, is very weird to me. So I don't like it when guys do that. Obviously if that's not something that you care about, whatever. But for me personally, I would not want a guy to propose to me on my birthday, because I want my birthday to be about me and my sister. We're twins, so that's the only thing that we should be thinking about on our birthday. We shouldn't be thinking about how some guy 20 years proposed to me. We shouldn't be thinking about how some guy 5 years ago proposed to me and basically ruined my birthday for the rest of time if that relationship didn't work out. And so, with them getting engaged, this was the perfect opportunity for another prank war. So, what happened was Sammy and Justin got engaged privately. They did kind of record it and they didn't really talk about it publicly. But when the group went to Miami, they were able to basically get Paula D to help them with a prank to pretend like Justin was going to propose to Sammy on this Miami trip. And so basically, Paula D gets the rest of the group involved and tells them, hey, Justin needs my help. He wants to propose to Sammy. We gotta make it happy. We gotta make it happen. And so the girls go out and they get like wine, flowers, all of this stuff. I don't know who is responsible for the food. It sounds like it was the situation from what I can recall. And then basically what happens is they have Justin propose to Sammy using like word blocks or whatever, will you marry me? And then the plan is for her to pretend like she's upset about him proposing to her publicly. So she's like, wait, why did you do this? I told you I didn't want to make it public. And so I told you I wanted it private. And so she's giving him attitude, and everyone is just like, oh my God, it's just trying. So everyone speaks out because they think that he's genuinely proposing and that it's also going very wrong. And so obviously that's when he's like, that's what I did 2 weeks ago. And so if you catch that, you understand like, and even if you already knew that they got engaged and you're watching the episode closely, you know that they're already engaged. But it was so believable to the group in the moment because they really thought the proposal was going wrong. And so that was a great moment for a prank war. Alrighty, moving on to my fifth point, we have the Miami trip, which I just talked about, and also the Angelina and Vinny drama. So the Miami trip, Dina is really happy to host us because I think the last couple of family vacations, the boys have been hosting it and it has not gone well. The girls have been bored and nothing has really been planned, so they're really excited for Dina to take over the vacation. So Dina is actually very thoughtful. She puts together a binder, she has t-shirts made and all of that stuff. And what I really liked was that one, she had that big welcome sign for everyone when they arrived at the hotel, and obviously it lets everybody else know that they're filming Jersey Shore or whatever. But I really liked that. The other thing that I liked was that when the cast got to the hotel and they went to the front desk, she had something different for each of them that kind of fit their personality or whatever was going on with them. And so I really liked that she made that special touch to make the trip feel more personal and kind of what they wanted from the trip with her taking over. So I was really glad to see that. With that being said, there were some issues with the group, I guess, not wanting to do everything that Dina had planned. So we did have this moment where she basically took everyone down memory lane, and basically there was like a clue that you had to read out, and then you had to figure out what place that clue was talking about. And it was basically capturing all of like the high level moments from when the group was living in Miami. So we got to see them go back to their old house, and this is where we were first introduced to the Sammy doll, and the Sammy doll was still there. Obviously, they just brought the doll there. I don't think the owners actually kept the doll all this time, whatever. And so it was really cool to see how they went from the shore house to the Miami house, and then they also stopped at other places that they had gone to in Miami. And so we do even see some flashbacks from like the OG show, and then also the earlier seasons of Family Vacation. And so one of the moments that I really liked that we saw was when they go to that cafe shop, because when they were doing the OG show, they did not have their phones and I don't think they had a computer. So they basically had no communication with the outside world unless they were using the duck phone. And so when they're in Miami, we see them go into like this cafe or whatever that has a computer, and they're typing up the note, the infamous note that they sent to Sammy to let her know that Ronnie was cheating on her. And so we see them go there and they're reenacting, typing out the note. And obviously, the note is going to be a legendary moment just because of the fact that they would type the note and then everything that happened afterwards, as far as the girls fighting and the fallout and all of that stuff with Sammy and Ronnie. So one of the things that Dina planned is so any anyways So with Dina kind of understanding that everyone doesn't want to do what she has planned, she does give each cast member a day to plan or a night to plan, whatever, a day night activity for them to plan so that the group can do something. I can't remember what everyone had planned. I know that Jenny took them to the strip club. I know that Holly D took them on a yacht day, and then the situation took them to the Versace mansion, but he pretended like he bought them real Versace, and then obviously he told them, hey, it's not real, it's fake. And so it's very weird for them to be going to the Versace mansion wearing fake Versace, whatever. But Versace, what happened at the Versace mansion is related to what I want to talk about next. But one thing I want to back up to is that what's his name took the group to a bowling day, and I'm gonna try and come back to that if I can remember. So what I wanted to talk about in connection with this fifth top moment is all of the Angelina drama with Vinny. And so we know that Angelina's a lot of fans do not like her because they feel like she's causing a lot of drama amongst the cast, and then she's also bringing all of her personal issues into the show. And one thing that I'm very puzzled by is the OG show was known for partying and relationship drama. So we had Sammy and Ronnie, their drama. We had JWoww and her boyfriend that she came on the show with, and then the Roger drama, and then Snooki's drama with Gianni, and then I don't even remember hearing much about Mike's relationship. I don't remember hearing much about Vinny's relationship or Pauly D's relationship. So it was really focused on those 3 or 4 relationships that I talked about. And we even saw that when Family Vacation first came back, we saw that it was Ronnie who was having a lot of the relationship problems. And we also saw a little bit of Jenny because I can't recall when she divorced Roger, but there were domestic violence incidences with the two of them. And I don't know if she got divorced before the show or within the first season or two of the show, and then she ended up with 24. And so what I'm very puzzled by is why people are kind of annoyed that Angelina's relationship drama is kind of like taking over the show when that's what happened in the OG show. So obviously, maybe they want somebody else's relationship to be in the spotlight, but this should be normal because the OG show, as I said, was about partying and then also relationship drama. So getting into the drama, Angelina is obviously older. We know that she divorced Chris earlier in the season, so that was somebody that she was with for a few years. They got married on the show, and then they got basically divorced on or off the show. And then now she's with Vinny 2.0. I can't recall how they met, but basically she moved him in very quickly, and then basically she wants to get engaged, get married, and have kids and all of that stuff. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but her biggest thing that she's been saying is that he's never home with her. He's always in the gym. He's always working out. And they are betting heads about this one point regarding Instagram and a blue check. And so he's saying, Angelina said she could help me get a blue check and whatever. And then Angelina's acting surprised to find out that he had a blue check. And so she's bringing up this argument that basically he's using her for fame and then also for money because she talks about things that she got him. And I think she got him like some gift or whatever, and he wanted to return it for the cash so that he could keep the cash or something like that. And so obviously she's bringing up these different moments to basically say to the group and to the fans watching the show that she believes that Vinny is using her, that he doesn't actually want to be with her. And so we really see that coming to a head on the Miami trip. We see that Vinny is kind of snapping at her and kind of a little bit more out of pocket than we've usually seen from him. But at the same time, Angelina is also instigating a lot of their arguments with her reactions because not that she's very aware of the camera, but obviously she knows that she's being recorded, and so she can say things in a way that's like, really, you're talking to me like that? And she's obviously having the moment with him, but she's also saying that for the camera as well. And so there's a lot of moments where they could have just resolved things differently if they had genuinely been talking, but they're both just making the situation worse. And so we see the group getting involved. They have maybe one or two group interventions. We do see that when Vinny hosts bowling night, Vinny and Angelina show up. They're late, and at this point, because Angelina told the girls at the Versace mansion that everything weird going on with told them about everything weird going on with Vinny, they were more willing to confront him. And so we see Snooki confronting him. She's getting angry. She's like, "You're using my friend. Why do you love her?" And basically, he's like, I love her, but she is difficult. She's a lot to deal with. And so obviously, that is not something good to say about your spouse or your partner in a public setting. And so Snooki is really upset by this, and she's just going after him. But then he's also yelling back at her, and then none of the cast, none of the OG men are getting involved in this. They know what's going on, but they're just really listening. And so I didn't like that none of the men really spoke up when Vinny Chiffon was like kind of yelling at them or just kind of not necessarily getting aggressive, but he shouldn't be talking to the women like that, first of all. And so I didn't like that none of the men kind of stepped in to kind of diffuse the situation a little bit. So we do see kind of Vinny 2.0 getting separated from the group. And one of the things that came out was that basically he was saying that by being with Angelina, that being on the show is part of his job, which makes sense because if you're bringing your partner or your spouse with you on these family vacations, obviously they're going to get some airtime. And so he had a bigger role this season, but Lauren is the one that I would say is the most present spouse on the show. We do have Chris Buckner in 24, but I feel like Lauren gets the most talking heads or confessionals, and she's just kind of a little bit more involved in the storyline. And I do feel like that's because she's the situation's wife. So, and I haven't really seen any of the women have their spouses that heavily in the limelight. Even Nikki is not really in the storylines like that, but I think it's because she chooses not to be. But I also don't think that she would be getting as much airtime as Lauren, even if she wanted to be on the show. So that's just very interesting. And obviously, I know that people don't like Lauren because they say that she's snooty and all of this stuff, whatever. Um, So we really have Vinny kind of getting more involved in the storyline as it relates to Angelina, and just kind of him not necessarily overstepping, but he, I guess, is doing what is asked of him if production is willing to film shots of him sitting by himself while the group is at dinner, whatever. And so obviously we see this really coming to a head, and then there's even talk about an NDA and blackmail and all of this stuff going on. But anyway, towards the end of the season, we do have Angelina and Vinny 2.0 talking to the group, and they're really just trying to figure out, like, what are your reasons for getting together? What are your reasons for breaking up? And that sort of thing. And there's this point where they ask Angelina if she loves Vinny, because Vinny was asked that same question, and he says yes. And she really can't answer, and she doesn't know how she feels. And so obviously the group thinks that they should break up because they're very toxic together, and they're really not sure of why they're together and how to move forward to either get married and have kids or to just separate. And so that was a huge part of the season in season 7. But again, I do want to go back to that point. The OG show is known for party and relationship drama, so I don't think there's any issues with Angelina having her time in the spotlight with her relationship drama. With us talking about the Angelina and Benny 2.0 drama, this is where I mentioned that my sister was kind of really invested in the show, and so obviously she was just sharing her opinions on everything that was happening, and I'm really glad that we were kind of able to see that and see it with adult eyes, because I know that one of the very controversial things is that in the OG show, everyone was kind of showing the Sammy and Ronnie drama, and I don't know if there was a huge reaction to like domestic violence and toxic relationships back then, but I think people either did not like Sammy or they didn't feel sorry for her or whatever. But now when people are watching that back, they have a different perception of what was going on, because one, they're older and they're just seeing it differently. And then obviously with me being older and kind of seeing things differently, I can see where both Angelina and Vinny 2.0 are playing different parts that are kind of interfering with their relationship being where it could be. And so that is pretty much where the season ends. Alrighty, so to wrap up this video, I'm super excited that we even have a reboot of Jersey Shore. I will forever and always watch the Family Vacation TV show. I know that people are talking about how like it's not interesting anymore and they just don't understand why they're even filming, but I honestly would keep watching as long as they keep filming, and I hope that they do, because there's not that many shows that are about friend groups that don't have a lot of crazy drama, or they can't function without there being some type of drama amongst the group. And so I'm glad that this group is able to get together for the most part and just have fun and be silly and do the things that are entertaining to us without being so focused on needing drama to move the episodes and the seasons along. So I know obviously people hate Angelina for that because they feel like she's bringing a lot of drama and just a lot of stress to the show and the filming aspect of it, but I do appreciate that there's a good balance between them just having fun and bonding with each other, and also having a decent amount of drama to keep it a little bit interesting. One thing I do want to give them credit for is that they do a great job of breaking the fourth wall. I know that this is a huge issue for the Bravo universe because they really won't acknowledge that they're filming a TV show, but we do see a lot of moments where the cast we do see a lot of moments where the cast interacts with the camera and they interact with us, the viewers, who are the camera, whatever. And so I really just like that they take the time to do that, because by now we all know that they're filming a TV show. We don't need to pretend like we don't know that. And one thing I really like is that when they're filming the TV show, they do take the time to kind of like acknowledge fans and wave to them. And I really love being able to see like the fan reactions to them walking in somewhere, and people just reacting to the fact that they know who these people are who just walked in and that they're filming, because once upon a time, Jersey Shore was like the biggest thing in reality TV show, and they literally had crowds of people following them everywhere just to kind of like be around them. And so obviously it's not like that anymore, but I'm glad that they still have a show to film and that they get to continue entertaining us. So lastly we have the reunion. I have not watched it yet. I did see some of the previews for it, and I know that there's supposed to be a special guest. I'm not sure who that is. Right now it's January 27th, so I think most of the reunion has aired already. I just haven't watched it yet, and I don't know who that special guest was. I did see a viral kind of like meme or like a Reddit post talking about Mike's haircut, which I haven't really seen yet either. But I don't know if I'm gonna watch the reunion because I typically do not like the reunion. They are very old school and repetitive, and they just keep basically rehashing the same stuff that has already been talked about throughout the season. And I wish they made it more of a Bravo type of reunion to where we are covering things that happen, but we're getting to hear more from the cast, and it just feels less of a scripted reunion show, if that makes sense. And so I really do hope that they either scrap that altogether or they really reboot how they do the reunions to make it interesting, because I think everyone wants to see more content from them. One thing I did see was that someone was saying that they have like a bunch of unaired footage and it would be really amazing if they released that all to us. But then when I was thinking about that, I was like, a lot of it kind of wouldn't make sense because one, we would be going back in time, and then we'd have to kind of figure out where that fit in with the OG storyline and all of that stuff. And so I don't know how it would flow continuity wise, but it would be really nice to see old footage. And I mean, everyone's gonna want as much content as they can get from this group of people, and so I really just hope that they can figure out how to make the reunions more valuable. Alrighty, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Alrighty, alrighty, so that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. It was really great doing this video. I know that the alrighty, so that covers everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.